we know that animals communicate. These vocal messages are hard to miss, but they're just a fraction of what's really being said. Like humans, animals also use their bodies to get their point across. It could be a gesture, a posture, or even a look. But how do we know what they're actually saying? With the help of the latest technology, scientists are beginning to decode the meaning to every move. Sometimes it's like looking in the mirror. So is our own body language more primal than we thought? Perhaps we all have the ability to talk to the animals. This monkey is urinating. But he's not just relieving himself. He's sending a message. And he isn't blushing because he's been caught in the act. His red face is also a means of communication. He's a bald wakari, a monkey that lives in the Amazon. He does a little jig before the bodily function, which sends an important message every time he takes a toilet break. By peeing higher up the branch and shaking his legs, he's telling the other monkey that he is dominant. When you can't speak, your body becomes your voice. Many animals have a limited repertoire of sounds they can make. But they do have a wide range of body and facial movements to help them communicate. And so do we. Body language helps humans and animals alike to express themselves. With animals, some of these signals are obvious. But most are too subtle for us to catch. Cracking the code is a challenge to researchers, but one species provides a good starting point. Our closest relatives, chimpanzees. Like us, they're highly intelligent and live in complex social groups. Stable troops can have anything from 15 to 150 members. To avoid aggression with each other, they have a well-defined social hierarchy. If lines are crossed, for example, a lower-ranking male puts the moves on a female, the dominant male will remind him who's boss. To try to avoid serious injury, communication is key. Chimps are noisy, but their vocal repertoires are limited. Instead, they have developed an extensive vocabulary in body language. Primatologist Catherine Hobater has spent 11 years in West Africa researching chimpanzee body language. She also observes their behavior in captivity and today visits Edinburgh Zoo in Scotland. Here, 20 chimps live in the world's biggest chimp enclosure, designed to encourage natural behavior. She comes to observe them because she believes these highly evolved apes hold the key to understanding the development of our own language, both physical and vocal.
I'm really interested in the evolution of human communication. And unfortunately, you can't go dig up a fossilized word from our evolutionary ancestors. So what I do is compare human communication with the communication of other species. Chimpanzees, like humans, have a really wide range of gestures. In the case of chimps, we're up to about 80 different movements that they make with their body, and each one of those is going to convey a different type of information. That helps them navigate all of the parts of their social world. So, if you want to tell someone off for stealing your food, so a huge fight just broke out. Some of the really valuable food, different types of fruits were being put out this morning, and a couple of individuals started to fight over the food, and then everybody got involved. And that means coming in and hugging your friend and showing you've got their back. It means reaching out and possibly shaking hands and reconciling with the one you had a fight with. What you can hear there is just lots of screaming, but what you're seeing is at least 15 or 20 different types of gesture. And those different types of body language help you differentiate between those much more subtle types of communication.
But isolating the many subtle gestures and interpreting them is complicated. So Catherine videos the animals she observes. Noting the reaction a particular gesture triggers, she can work out what the gesture means. It's taken 11 years of research to isolate and decode 80 different chimp gestures. Some are more obvious than others. Reaching out for an embrace, rolling over to invite play, skipping to say, "Follow me." By pointing at the mouth, this chimp is asking for some of the food inside. And by putting its fingers in the other's mouth, this chimp is showing it trusts the other one. But how does this young chimp know it's time to climb on its mother's back? Look again. She lifts her back leg. That's the signal to hop on board. Catherine's work with chimps is opening up a whole new world of communication we didn't know existed. The more scientists look, the more signals they're able to identify. It takes both chimp and human babies several years of learning from their parents and through playing with other youngsters to master these communication skills. But a gesture doesn't need to be complex or learned to get the message across. It doesn't take much to understand this body language. The cobra rearing and opening its hood to strike is a purely innate response. It's just following its instinct. When faced with danger, the snake is genetically programmed to respond, even with no previous experience of the situation. Even though it's a deadly predator, this body language is used in defense, not attack. In the face of danger, the snake uses body language to deflect the threat rather than biting, which would waste valuable venom and risk injury. A grazing herd of elephants presents a major threat to the cobra's safety. An adult can weigh, on average, 12,000 pounds. Any one of them is capable of trampling an unwitting snake. With every heavy step, they send sound waves through the earth. The cobra has no ears, but it picks up the vibrations through its jawbone. And the looming danger triggers the snake's instinctive response. It concentrates its body mass and muscle in one place, ready to strike, but it would prefer not to have to. So, as the elephants get closer, the cobra's body language becomes more pronounced. It spreads out elongated ribs to form a hood, making itself look bigger. It's a strong visual message. I'm dangerous and will hurt you. Leave me alone. But it doesn't seem to deter the encroaching elephants. As the herd approaches, the snake deploys a second visual warning that's a lot more direct. This isn't just any cobra. It's a Mozambique spitting cobra. It can spray its venom up to 10 feet away, aiming straight for the eyes of its attacker. On contact, the venom can cause extreme pain and even blindness. This instinctive body language normally works to get the snake out of tricky situations. But the eyes of all but the smallest elephants are beyond the reach of its spray. Nevertheless, the cobra can't help itself. It's pre-programmed to keep spraying. If it needs to defend itself, its reaction is completely automatic. And the message is clear: back off. But what message is this animal sending? As it skips along, rolls in the dirt, and then urinates on itself. His message can only be understood by a member of the opposite sex. He's an Arabian tahr, a distant cousin of the mountain goat and one of the world's most endangered species. Finding a female to mate with is a little harder for the tahr than for most other animals. He lives a solitary life in the dry, desolate wastes of the Arabian Peninsula. Extremely low numbers in the wild means encounters with the opposite sex are rare. So, when a lone male does chance upon a female, he has to make sure he gets his girl. This could be his only chance to mate, maybe ever. So he employs body language to get right to the point. The performance has several acts. First comes the pawing. It's a real attention grabber. Then he coats a nearby bush with pungent scent from special sex glands. It looks like she could be interested. Now he urinates on himself. What female could resist? After a bit more pawing, he brings out the big guns. Now he's got her attention. Time to show her his moves. The message is unmistakable. Look at me. Running and skipping all over the place is supposed to convince the female he's a fit specimen, worthy of siring her offspring. "24 hours later, the female's accepted his presence under her tree. He keeps on scenting, filling the air with his goatee musk. As a solitary animal, this male won't have learned his courtship behavior through watching others. Just like the cobra's spitting, it's instinctive. But it's not automatic. Unlike the cobra, the male actively decides when to break out his moves. This time, they've worked their magic. But the female won't stay with him for long. Maintaining long-term relationships requires much higher levels of communication. Not just to attract a mate for a one-night stand, but to keep them happy for the long haul. Cape gannets live in groups numbering in the thousands, nesting from September to April on the islands off Africa's rugged southern shoreline. This male is returning to his mate after a fishing trip. She's somewhere in the middle of the colony. To reach her, he has to wade through the dense crowd. But gannets are intensely territorial about their limited space. Their nests are exactly a body length apart. Crossing the boundary lines is not allowed. It doesn't leave the male much space to squeeze through. To avoid annoying his neighbors, the male deploys a key piece of body language. Sky pointing. He's sending a clear message to the other gannets, "I'm just passing through. And I'm definitely not trying to steal your space." While avoiding eye contact with the neighbors, he's also listening out for his mate. Cape gannets pair bond for life. But it's hard to pick out a face in the crowd. So they must learn to recognize each other's call. When he finally reaches his partner, he deploys a different kind of body language, just to confirm he's got it right. Bill dancing reinforces the pair's close, lifelong bond. This bonding behavior, like grooming and courting, is initiated by a chemical called mesotocin. It's similar to oxytocin, the so-called love hormone in humans. But mesotocin is the version found in birds and also amphibians and reptiles. While part of a couple, both birds maintain high levels of the hormone to keep their bond tight. They need to make a pact that they will work together through the tough weeks of chick rearing that lie ahead. After 3 months, their chick will leave the nest. Then the adults will head out to sea, going their separate ways. They won't see each other again for 5 months. But when the next breeding season begins, they will return to the island, listen for each other's calls, and use the same gestures again to renew their commitment. Though elegant and functional, and more sophisticated than that of the cobra and tar, the body language of Cape gannets is also limited. It bonds the pair and maintains peace in the colony during their breeding season. But it's still innate. The behavior is instinctive from birth. It's in the bird's DNA. As social interaction becomes more complex, so does the behavioral repertoire that goes with it. It moves beyond the limits of instinct. These behaviors must be learned. Like human babies, chimps spend years learning body language from their mothers and other members of their troop. They live in complex societies with the need to communicate all sorts of social dynamics.
This is not just about coming together to fight or to find a mate, but this is about who's going to be friends with who's an ally to who's kind of getting together to possibly take over the group in a week or two. It could be who's going to share food.
Chimp relationships echo the complexity of human society. Their body language has evolved to send a vast array of messages covering anything from group politics to everyday gossip. As Catherine's footage from the wild reveals, their limited range of vocalizations isn't varied enough to cover every type of interaction. But the body's range of movements is vast, so their body language can compensate for their lack of words. This alpha male wants a female to come to him.
What he does is he reaches out his arm, and then she comes over and presents to him. She comes.
This male is also signaling for a female to come to him. But she doesn't respond quickly enough.
And he's getting a little bit fed up with that, so he gives this really huge, big shake with both arms of these trees, these big object moves, really dramatic gesture, basically telling her, come on, come here right now.
When a subordinate asks permission to share food from a higher-ranking chimp, it must make the right moves.
And so we're getting these little begging gestures, these little reaches. And there we go, he gives her a little bit and she can go and have a little feed.
Chimp infants learn through their everyday interactions with other members of the troop. In this scene, the youngster at the bottom of the tree wants to be with his friend. The outstretched arm means, let's get closer. His friend mirrors the gesture. But the youngster on the ground is at the bottom of the social hierarchy. So he must get permission from his friend's mother first. He reaches out again to express his desire. But she doesn't allow it. The youngster's reaction doesn't need any decoding. A tantrum is universal. Chimps share over 95% of our DNA. So, having sophisticated body language almost as diverse as our own may not come as a surprise. But what about other animals? Scientists are realizing that this degree of complex communication is not just a primate trait. Wolves have a lot in common with chimps. They're highly social. They live in a structured society with an alpha male and female in charge. Like chimps, they play, bicker, and socialize with each other. Most importantly, they need to form a solid, tight-knit team to hunt down prey. Behavioral ecologist Eleanor Hobkirk is researching how wolves use body language to unite the pack and maintain the social hierarchy.
A small female walked over to a large male, and what she simply did was that she just stood across him. And that was enough for her to just say to him, despite the size difference in them, is that she is the more dominant wolf.
By just putting his chin on the back of a pack member, the alpha male is reminding this other wolf, I pull rank over you. Asserting their authority in this way allows the alpha pair to manage the pack's resources and control who gets to breed. They also need to command the pack when it sets out to hunt or defend its territory. All this is communicated through body language alone. Exposing the most vulnerable part of the body, the belly, is a sure sign of submission.
That wolf came over to the other one and just stood over it, and then the one who was lying on the ground just rolled over. That's just a little bit of a social interaction there, just to remind each other of their ranks. Things like tail gestures as well, so the way they move their tail. The tail is tucked right up underneath them, then they're being submissive.
And of course, there's the tail wag. This signals the wolves are relaxed and happy, something all dog owners are familiar with. These signals are very visual, but Eleanor's discovered there are many others which are far easier to miss.
So if you see a tongue flick from these guys, it's usually a sign of appeasement.
Blink and you miss it. But wolves are highly attuned to these cues.
Wolves generally see the world faster than we do. And because of that, we generally see a lot of very subtle facial movements. So when I'm looking back at my videos that I've recorded of the wolves doing the facial expressions, I have to slow it down to about a quarter of the speed just to actually pick out these finer details, these subtle movements.
Wolves are often feared because their gestures can look so aggressive. But looks can be deceiving. Eleanor's research reveals that usually the opposite is true.
My might see sort of jaw snap. You'll generally see their ears go back as well, and they'll tend to show their teeth quite often as well. But when you watch it in slow motion, you see that they don't actually harm each other.
As with humans and chimps, clear communication can help avoid conflict.
There's no point trying to waste all of your energy to fight constantly to maintain these hierarchies when all you can do simply is just walk over and just go, hey, I'm boss, and then leave.
Wolves use body language not just to maintain hierarchy, but also for team bonding.
Sometimes you'll see other behaviours as well, nuzzling together, where they'll sort of nuzzle noses or nuzzle their heads together. They'll do a bit of snuffling behaviour as well. You'll also see that when they're sleeping together as well, that they're usually very close together, also touching. So there's a lot of behaviours where, yes, the wolves just do touch each other, and these reinforce social bonds. And it's important to reinforce these social bonds because without them, then you don't have the pack, you don't have this family unit. And you need that in order to go off and do different things during the day, to hunt elk, for example. So you need these, you need to be able to work together.
After 3 years of close observation, Eleanor has decoded more than 20 different gestures.
And just like we talk to one another, wolves themselves use these expressions as a language. So we talk to one another, and that helps us avoid aggression, it helps us avoid violence. So wolves also use these expressions within a pack environment to also avoid aggression and avoid violence. They're very sort of much like us, to be honest.
If we can see strong similarities in such distantly related animals, can we trace the origins of our own body language back through the animal kingdom? Just how far back can we go? Some of our behaviors are driven by instinct. When an argument threatens to turn into a brawl, a person will assess their opponent. They might choose to escalate if they think they can win. Or if they realize they can't win the fight, they might talk their way out of it. Using communication to avoid conflict is a strategy found throughout the animal kingdom, even in species with very different social lives to our own. On the sand dunes of the Rub al Khali Desert in Oman, the stage is set for battle. An Arabian oryx guards his harem of females and their young. But it's the rut, the annual breeding season. A rival appears, hoping to muscle in on his herd. Oryx are famed for their spear-like horns and fiery nature. They can easily kill each other if a horn pierces a vital organ. With such high stakes, avoiding a full-on fight is preferable. Instead, oryx use body language to make their point. A second bull appears on the scene. And so begins a dance, a ritual of gestures. The animals walk side by side, sizing each other up. A bow of the head is a challenge, and a chance to show off his horns. They test the waters, locking horns. Small pushes assess each other's strength. It looks like a fight, but it's carefully choreographed. Each animal is saying, "I'm bigger and stronger than you. Look at my horns. Are you sure you want to mess with me?" This sizing up allows one side to quickly and painlessly determine that he doesn't stand a chance against the opposition. The smaller of the two males chooses retreat over injury. Thanks to this ritualized body language, the dominant male has managed to hold on to his multiple females without having to fight. But what happens when mating roles are reversed? When it's not males, but females selecting their mates? Can body language help a female manipulate males to protect her cubs? This pride of African lions has two adult males. One is slightly older and larger than the other, but both are important in defending the pride's territory. So it's in a female's best interest to keep both males invested in her offspring. Today, most of the pride's lionesses are out hunting. Only one female has stayed behind. She's in estrus. She's ovulating. The younger male barely leaves her side, mating with her at every opportunity. His body language is clear. This female is his, and her cubs will be his. But the female knows that that won't be enough to ensure the safety of her cubs. She must make the other male believe he's the father as well. Only then will both males protect her young. The older male doesn't seem interested. But never underestimate the power of female body language. She nuzzles him, then lies down next to him. The young male tries to intervene, but she keeps her focus on the older male. She even pushes the youngster out of the way. There's no doubt what the female is trying to communicate with her flirtatious body language. In contrast, female spotted hyenas don't waste their time with seduction. They're dominant in the pack and use body language to make sure everyone knows it. Each pack is led by a matriarch. She aggressively mounts the males, and sometimes also other females, to remind them she's in charge. Female hyenas communicate their dominance with the help of a pseudopenis. It's a muscular tube through which the female hyena mates, urinates, and gives birth. Mounting another individual is the ultimate display of dominance in any species. It's about as clear as body language gets. But as primatologist Catherine Hobater is revealing, for sheer range and versatility of body language, the chimps have every other animal beat. Currently, she's studying to what extent we have body language in common with our closest living relatives. It's easy to understand the chimp gesture for "go away." It's identical to our own. But do we have more complex signals in common? Here at Edinburgh Zoo, the chimps frequently interact with human researchers. They freely stroll into the observation room when they feel like it.
Hi, Louis.
It's an opportunity to study how well chimp and human can understand each other.
Now we have to do fingers out first. No, fingers out.
The chimp demonstrates what it wants by pointing at an object.
Okay, I'm just trying to find out what kind of food he prefers. A blueberry and an apple. Let's see which one he chooses.
The choice is clear.
Chooses the blueberry. Which one?
But the communication is short-lived.
No. He's not. Oh, he didn't even get his reward.
The alpha male has decided to join the party.
That's Kabzi, that's the alpha.
That's the alpha male.
He launches into a dominance display, banging the walls as he would trees in the wild to show off his strength.
So he's showing some of the same behaviours he might use to another chimp to communicate with you in this context.
Right.
He's expecting the people, as well as the other chimps, to get the message. And he's not the only one. A dominant female spits at the observers to show she's in charge.
So this is really interesting, because she's a very high-ranking chimp, and she's actually being very kind of dominant with you as well.
These actions are intended to be noticed by the researchers, not the other chimps. So the chimps are acting with some expectation their actions will be understood by humans. But these humans have had years to become familiar with chimp gestures. Catherine wants to find out if all people can understand chimp body language. Is it possible that thanks to our close kinship, we can all speak chimp? She's going to play 10 clear body language gestures such as let's groom, climb on my back, and come here right now to members of the public and record their answers.
Are we going to see whether or not we can understand some chimpanzee language?
Catherine's volunteers have never seen the clips before.
Look at that, with the little push.
It's part of a much bigger experiment Catherine has been performing.
Or that is actually one of the meanings of that gesture.
If her thousands of volunteers can work out what the gestures mean, it might suggest that humans have an instinctive understanding of chimp body language from way back in our evolution when we shared a common ancestor. Chimps, being such close relatives, seem the best candidates for interspecies communication. We can recognize expressions like a frown or grin. But new research is suggesting these sophisticated facial expressions are used by animals that might surprise us. In the course of her research, zoologist Eleanor Hobkirk has begun to document the varied facial expressions of wolves. She believes she's unlocking a very detailed but subtle form of communication in addition to their more obvious body language.
Wolves have complex facial expressions that they use to communicate with one another within a pack.
Wolf faces are extremely malleable. Facial musculature allows them to move their ears, eyebrows, muzzle, forehead and lips independently, more so than any other member of the wild dog family. With so many possible muscle combinations, wolves can generate a lot of expressions.
Up until now, it was thought that only higher primates and humans were capable of communicating via facial expressions. However, through my research, it seems to be that these guys, wolves, have independently evolved to be able to communicate via facial expressions in a similar way to ourselves.
These wolves are angry with each other. Both have wrinkled their noses and pulled back their lips to expose all their teeth. Wide, unblinking eyes, raised eyebrows, ears facing forward, and a tightly closed mouth show surprise. A lowered head with wide eyes, ears facing back and mouth open but not displaying teeth indicates joy. It's an expression many dog owners will recognize. Eleanor's research is starting to challenge a long-held assumption about dogs and wolves. Animal behaviorists have long assumed dogs learned some facial expressions from humans during the 10,000 years of their domestication. That domestic dogs have been mimicking us to help them communicate with us. But Eleanor's work reveals that wolves have exactly the same expressions as their domestic descendants. So it could be that wolves have communicated facially for hundreds of thousands of years. Perhaps this facilitated their domestication into dogs.
So because humans communicate via facial expressions and wolves communicate via facial expressions, then perhaps that allowed for early interactions between humans and wolves to occur and therefore eventually lead to the domestic dog becoming man's best friend.
So we may understand our own pets and their wild ancestors better than we think. At Edinburgh Zoo, Catherine Hobater is reaching the end of her experiment. She has collected data from more than 7,000 people.
You know what grooming is?
Yeah.
Good. We've run that experiment now with thousands of people, and we do much, much better than we'd expect to do just by chance. Look at that, 2 out of 2. You're speaking chimp fantastically. So what we just saw there was that people were getting 2 out of 3, even 3 out of 3 right. And what that tells us is that a lot of these gestures that we've been seeing in the chimps seem to also form part of our own repertoire. Even if we're not using them, we're at least still recognizing them. And that means that this system of gestural communication goes back a really long way in our ancestry, possibly back, you know, as far as our last common ancestor, who might also have gestured in the same sort of way. And there's probably a little bit of chimp left in all of us.
Chimp and wolf research is revealing there's more overlap between humans and wild animals than we previously thought. As science helps us decode the meaning to certain gestures, we may discover that many different animals' body language comes from the same universal language. And it's one that we can understand.